You are now listening to theGrio's Black Podcast Network, Black Culture Amplified.
Hi, and welcome to the Blackest Questions. I'm your host, Dr. Christina Greer, politics editor for theGrio and associate professor of political science at Fordham University. In this podcast, we ask our guests 5 of the Blackest Questions so we can learn a little bit more about them and have some fun while we're doing it. We're also going to learn a lot about Black history, past and present. So here's how this works. We have 5 rounds of questions about us, Black history, the entire diaspora, current events, you name it. And with each round, the questions get a little tougher, and the guest has 10 seconds to get it right. If they answer the question correctly, they'll receive 1 symbolic black fist, and they'll hear this. And if they get it wrong, they'll hear this. But we still love them anyway. And after the trivia portion is done, there'll be a Black bonus round with our guest, where we learn just a little bit more about him. So, our guest for this episode is Harry Lennix, a seasoned actor and producer from Chicago, who's been a part of dozens of TV shows and films, including The 5 Heartbeats, Ray, The Matrix, Dollhouse, and several DC Superman films. And for the past 10 years, he's played Harold Cooper on the hit TV show The Blacklist.
Not protecting anything. We're righting what was wrong.
Keep telling yourself that.
Lennix is also a stage actor who fell in love with it while studying to become a priest. We'll hear a bit more about that in a minute, but chose to take a different path and major in acting at Northwestern University. Lennix now lives in Los Angeles, where he's also founded 2 production companies. I would like to welcome Harry Lennix to the Blackest Questions. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited.
Well, I'm excited too. Thanks for having me, Christina. I'm looking forward to this.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I feel like, so many of our listeners and our viewers grew up watching you from the 5 Heartbeats. I am a loyal fan of The Blacklist. I think most of us know your voice more than anything. And so, my producer and I were talking before you came on, and it's like, the Harry Lennix voice is a very unique and distinct voice. When did you know when you had something, when you had that thing, that this acting thing's going to work out for me?
Well, I think I had a fairly early indication because I had this ability to recall lines, not just my own, but if I was in some sort of a school production and somebody went up on a line, which was not uncommon, you're doing those group shows and some person has to say, 3 men from the East, and somebody else has to say, 2 eggs and bacon, somebody would inevitably forget. But I would always know. And, so I thought at that point, I've got this aptitude. And then I think in my first high school play, well, actually before that, in elementary school, I played the lead character of Thomas Edison in a show called The Electric Sunshine Man. And somebody gave me the great compliment, Christine. They said, Christina, you reminded me of Clifton Davis on That's My Mama. I think that's what it was.
That's a major compliment. And I used to teach, I teach at a Jesuit institution. I was a thespian for a hot second. But when you were studying to become a priest, tell us about that. Because I know that you were once a public school teacher of music and physics. So you've had a whole bunch of lives as well. But tell us about studying to become a priest.
I think, as a matter of fact, I think we met each other, Christina, at Fordham. I came by one day, did I not? And did a something with August Wilson. It was some sort of a special session. Anyway, I think that was you. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, even though I'm not in the theater department, I love the theater people, so I always swing by.
Okay, great. Well, I early on, I didn't have a father to raise me. My father died before I was 2, and so it's quite interesting thing. I went to Catholic schools. My father was a devout Catholic, and sent me to Catholic school. So the first person that I called father was a guy with a collar, and so I guess I always associated that with a kind of parental role, and I thought that since I did not have a father, I could be that to many people. In a way. And so I was immediately interested in an ecclesiastical life, if you will. But it didn't, I also knew that I was curious about the outside world, something outside of, the cloth. and something that was more universal in a way. And I thought that could be acting or politics or
Yeah.
teaching. There are any number of professions, but I seemed, as I said, to have had an early indication that I should pursue this path. It was pretty, while it was not easy, it was pretty clear. And so I took the steps, and not no at no point were those steps faulty, I don't
Right.
think. And so here I am.
Well, and we're very thankful that you took this path. I mean, considering uh, the roles that you've had. So, are you ready to play the Blackest Questions?
I am ready to play the Blackest Question. I love that title. Yes, hit me. I'll see what
Okay,
I can do.
I'm playing the Blackest Questions with Harry Lennix. This is question number 1. This Pulitzer Prize-winning August Wilson play, starring Samuel L. Jackson and David Washington, took its final bow in New York City at the Barrymore Theater in January of 2023. Which play is it?
Well, that would be, I think, the piano lesson. But I
That's
think
right.
it's one of the few that have been filmed. I think PBS did it not long ago.
So The Piano is a story based in the 1930s about the Charles family that battle each other over their shared legacy and an antique piano. And as I mentioned, The Piano Lesson won a Pulitzer Prize for Best Drama and was the 4th play in the Wilson's Pittsburgh cycle, which has 10 different plays that he wrote about African American struggles throughout the 20th century. So your Broadway debut, if I'm not mistaken, was in August Wilson's Radio Golf. How did that happen? How did you land that role?
Well, um, I think it's interesting. I worked with August, and he was my idol, of course, as a playwright.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful person. I had an opportunity to get to know him personally over many years. But there was a play of King Hedley II, and Tony Todd started it out, but I got to do it in D.C. I'm sorry, I got to do it in L.A. And August Wilson, I think, based on that performance, thought about me for the last play of the 10 play cycle, Radio Golf, and so I have it on good evidence that he wrote that with me in mind, and I think that that's how I got it after his death. I was able to bring it to the McCarter
Mm-hmm.
in New Jersey, and then on to Broadway. So one of the great honors of my life.
So you've won several awards for your stage acting. You've even portrayed Malcolm X. It's among the many roles that you've played on stage. Now, is stage acting sort of like children? Are you allowed to have a favorite? And if so, what role is your favorite?
I actually used that very, very metaphor today, Christina. I said
Oh
the same
yeah.
thing, about my favorite episode of The Blacklist. But that said, I think my roles are favorite. They've changed over the years. But I would have to say that if I had to pick one, because I did it both on stage and screen, it would have to be Aaron the Moor and Julie Taymor's Titus Andronicus. And
Oh.
that's probably my favorite. He's such a badass. He's such a great character. They consider him Shakespeare's prototypical arch villain, uh,
Mm-hmm.
written before Iago, for example. We know that
Mm-hmm.
Titus is an earlier play, but that said, he's so eloquent and artful with his disdain for the power system and structure. And he prefers his own black son over the entirety of Rome, and he says so in the most eloquent language that only Shakespeare could write. So think where
Mm-hmm.
you combine the kind of liberation politics and the kind of aesthetic evil of the character and the delicious fun that presents, and you're getting a chance to do that with Anthony Hopkins and Jessica Lange.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'd have to say that's my favorite
Oh, I
experience.
love that you have a favorite. Well, we're about to take a quick commercial break. I'm with the eloquent and artful Harry Lennix, and we'll be right back. We're playing the Blackest Question. And we're back. I'm with Harry Lennix. We're playing the Blackest Questions. Harry, you are 1 for 1. You ready to play question number 2?
Yes,
Keep the
yes,
streak going?
that's it. It's only
Okay.
a streak after two. It's only a streak after.
Right. So, like you, this black actor launched his career on the stage in the Broadway production of A Raisin in the Sun and eventually broke into film, becoming the first black man to win an Oscar in the Best Actor category. Who was he?
Well, that's none other than the great Sidney Poitier. What a what a wonderful idol to all of us, like a mentor, pater familias. He's really in so many ways the first, but of course we know he also comes in a long legacy, and he knew that as well. So anyway, the great Sidney Poitier.
You are correct. Poitier lived in the Bahamas until he was 15 when he moved to Miami and then New York, where he joined the American Negro Theater. His first movie role was in the 1950 drama No Way Out, where he played the role of a lone black doctor working in an all-white hospital. His acting career spanned more than 50 years, and for 10 years, he was the Bahamian ambassador to Japan. And when he died last year, Tyler Perry said that there was no man in the business that was more of a North Star for him than Sidney Poitier, and clearly for so many other actors. And so when you think back on the legacy of his career and the impact it's had on your career, what do you see as some of the through lines between, his eloquence and, I would argue, the eloquence that you bring to stage and film and television?
Well, thank you for the comparison. It's always great to be in any way
That's good
associated
company.
That's great. It's pretty good company there. I think that the thing I have always taken away from him is his grace of movement. Like if you look at Sidney Poitier walk, there's a kind of swing that he has to it. It's both sort of demonstrative, but so subtle. It's got this beautiful dance thing to it, and he's got the same thing with his voice.
I will carry with me to my grave the wonders I have experienced.
So the kind of lilting quality is something that I think in oratory, rhetoric, ballet, these are the kinds of things, the grace, what has been called poetry in motion. And I think that he is that. And so I stole that really from him. Of course, the way that he walked the walk outside of the off screen as well and off stage. Great elegance, great poise, great temperance. I think that these are the things that we could all learn from as a kind of statesmanship.
Yeah.
You could see him. He could have been president. He really could have if he'd have put his
Absolutely.
mind to it. Yeah.
Well, and during lockdown, I watched a lot of movies that I should have seen and I hadn't seen, and so I went down a Sidney Poitier rabbit hole, and even the movies that he did with Bill Cosby, Uptown Saturday Night, Let's Do It Again, and it also seems as though he was having fun in some of his films, and there's just like an inner light and a joy that we saw from him, and so in his breaking of barriers. Fast forward, 50, 60 years, where do you think Hollywood is in terms of, racial and even gender inclusion when it comes to getting these roles where, we can see this type of eloquence and detail and fluidity of Black masculinity on the screen?
Well, I think there's a good deal of it, frankly. I think that now more than ever, we could raise questions sometimes about the integrity or the merit of some of the great numbers of black people that we see in the media. I think, and it's probably still the case, not just my opinion, the blacks are actually overrepresented in the media. And I think that people are especially sensitive now to making sure that that it be told from certain perspectives. And I think those are good movements, good things that happen. I think that we're seeing more women represented in the media, more women of color, and so I think all of that is a step in a positive direction, specifically toward men, since I think that was the specific question. I think that there is a lot of room for improvement. I think we're still seeing us dwelling on the same tropes of servitude or depravity frequently, or you also have the sort of hyper, how could I put it? They're either complete superheroes that are unrealistic and unrelatable, or they are, sort of digging in the dirt of the past and of the present. But that said, the underbelly. So I think that there's room for improvement. We've done a very good job, in my opinion, Christina.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your contribution to tilling
Thank you.
that soil. We're playing the Blackest Questions. I'm with Harry Lennix. He's 2 for 2. We'll be right back. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And we're back. We're playing the Blackest Questions. I'm with Harry Lennix. You're doing an amazing job. Are you ready for question number 3?
Yes, I am. I think
Okay.
so far. Yeah.
Great. Okay. This Trinidadian-born American jazz, classical pianist, and singer was an outspoken critic of racial discrimination and segregation, and she was also the wife of a New York congressman. Who was she?
That was the one. What could one use? Ebullient, effervescent, wonderful Hazel Scott, who is a
That's right.
tremendous jazz piano player.
Hazel Scott was a child musical prodigy, receiving scholarships to study at the Juilliard School when she was 8. In the 1950s, Scott became the first African-American woman to host her own television show, The Hazel Scott Show, which was a 15-minute music program where she performed show tunes. And in 1945, Scott married Baptist minister and U.S. Congressman Adam Clayton Powell. So you actually played Adam Clayton Powell, her husband, in Showtime's Keep the Faith Baby, which you won a Black Reel Award, and you were nominated for both an NAACP Image Award and a Golden Satellite Award. And Vanessa Williams played Hazel. So how did you prepare for that role in particular? And how do you normally prepare for roles? Because you've played some very diverse and distinct characters throughout your career.
Yes, I have. I've had the great honor of playing a number of them. Of course, none were more favorite to me than the great Adam Clayton Powell. Is such a colorful man, such a important person in the world. Really, the world wrote most of the major pieces of legislation that formed the Great Society that Lyndon Johnson was known for. But that said, I normally prepare by seeing if there's any kind of footage of the actor. I'm sorry, of the subject. And in this case, there's an abundant number of films that you could, well, not films so much, but footage that you could look at with Adam Clayton Powell. You can go on YouTube. I don't even think that was around when I was doing Keep the Faith Baby for Showtime, but there were other things like videotapes. PBS did a wonderful tribute to him in the American Experience, and so I looked a lot at that. And then of course there are records. You could get albums of his. He had an album of Keep the Faith Baby. So normally you have in 20th century figures you get to look at tape and you get to listen, and that's of course great. And if you don't have that, you're going back in time. Then of course there's whatever literature or articles or whatever. It's kind of like being an investigator in some way, and that's our study. That's the most fun part to me, really, in terms of preparing for a role.
Now, and when you're preparing, do you sort of lay things out first? I mean, do you write things down? Do you keep a journal? In addition to, if you have the ability to watch that particular sort of world or that individual, but, what is a more detailed process for you?
Yes, I don't keep a journal. When I know I'm ready to play a character, I'm able to draw it out, literally sort of sketch it out, in pretty fine detail of what they look like, how they walk, what they're wearing, these kinds of things, and I can figure that out visually, sort of somatically, rather more than I can intellectually. Although that's a big part of it. But I try to drive study as much as it can be, physically looking at behavior, listening to the person that I may be playing, or people who are from that part of the world, even now, where you're picking up things that are the music of it, and again, as I go back to Poitier, the walk, the swing of it, how it moves. So it depends, but that's normally my approach, is to do whatever intellectual work there is to be done, observation, research, and then trying to figure out what that looks like and what that sounds like.
Right. And I mean, I think for those of us who've been watching you in so many different films and on stage and on television over the years, there's a meticulousness to your approach that is just so beautiful to watch. So this is now the Blackest Questions turned into the Harry Lennix fan club, and we'll be right back after this commercial break.
The Grio Black Podcast Network is here, and it's everything you've been waiting for. News, talk, entertainment, sports, and today's issues, all from the Black perspective. Ready for real talk and Black culture amplified? Be inspired. Listen to new and established voices now on the Grio Black Podcast Network. Listen today on the Grio mobile app and tune in everywhere great podcasts are heard.
Okay, we are back. We're playing the Blackest Questions with Harry Lennix. We're moving on to question number 4. You are 3 for 3, Mr. Lennix. Are you ready to continue your streak? This is officially a streak, according to your definition.
It is officially a streak. That's right.
Okay, question number 4. This fraternity was the first fraternal organization founded at a historically Black college. Some of its notable members include Reverend Jesse Jackson, Michael Jordan, Steve Harvey, and Super Bowl quarterback Jalen Hurts. What fraternity is it?
Well, I'm a proud member of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, and it is we who were founded at Howard University. And
that's right.
Yep, that's exactly right. In 1911.
I'm a proud daughter of someone who is in the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, life membership number 242. But we know that the fraternity was founded in November of 1911 by 3 liberal arts students at Howard University. The frat has now has more than 750 chapters, and in 1924, one of its members, Carter G. Woodson, urged his fraternity to launch Negro History Week to publicize the accomplishments of African Americans, and by 1976, that idea had evolved in what we now know as Black History Month. So you're a proud member of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. You've also had a lead role in Stomp the Yard, which has a lot to do with Black Greek life. Where did you pledge, and what was that experience for you?
Well, this is an interesting story because I pledged I went over in 2012. But I began the process in 2011, the 100th year. But that being the case, that made me, I think, 47 years old. So I didn't pledge under the normal circumstances of an undergrad. I pledged a grad chapter in the North Shore of Chicago. It was really a unique and very special process, and I'm glad that after wanting to be a Q for so long, I was able to finally do it.
Yeah, and I did not pledge. My mother's an AKA, my father's a Q, but a lot of my upbringing was in sort of Omega Psi Phi. My dad's very active in the frat, and what I love is this idea of brotherhood, where I was always taught that no matter in the world where I was in the world, if I ever needed anything, my dad would always say, "Find a Q," right? And if you can't find a Q, then just find a Greek. Right, so it's like find a Kappa. My grandfather was a Sigma. My brother-in-law's a Kappa. But he's like, find a Greek, and then you kind of go down the list. It's like then find a Black person. But he's always told me the first thing you do, it's like if you ever need anything, you find a Q. And I think that it's such a beautiful way, especially for Black men, to create a whole additional family in addition to their given families. And we know that we've heard reports about hazing and issues that fraternal organizations are having. But what would you sort of tell Black men who are looking to join a fraternity at any age in life, since you didn't sort of follow the traditional kind of younger path of college pledging?
Well, I presume that if they're doing it as a grad, then, they're grown men who, know what it is that they want to involve themselves in. And I would say, look at the local chapter that you're going to join and see what they're doing. There should be a very clear record of what they do and what they have done and what they continue to propagate and to consistently provide. And if that's the type of organization that you want to belong to add your voice to a collective effort, or to find brothers who are like-minded that can join in your effort, then by all means do it. But if it's, but you'll know the nature of it. And if you're not trying to do that kind of thing and you find the chapter that isn't up to much, you can do that too. You're a grown man. So, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. What's been one of the best parts of being in a fraternity since you've pledged in this past, I guess, decade now?
Yes, well, I think it's kind of like finding a good church, a home church. There's something about the spirit of of the brothers, that join in union. Uh, it could be one on one, with a fraternity, but when you're with that person, you have a kind of language, and
Hmm.
there's a common understanding of reality in a sense, and a common approach to dealing with that. And I think
Hmm.
that. It's not uniform, but there are principles on which we can all agree, and if those are of like-minded thinking, wish to join with you, then you have fellows, and I think that that's the beautiful part for me.
Fantastic. Ugh. Well, I'm here with Harry Lennix playing the Blackest Questions. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to see if you can go 5 for 5.
All right.
No pressure. Okay, we're back. We're playing the Blackest Questions. I'm with the Harry Lennix. We're on to question number 5. Harry, are you ready?
I'm confident. I'm feeling
I
good.
mean, you're killing the game. I would say you can roll in. You can have a little more bass in the voice. Like, you know what? I'm ready. Like,
I'm ready.
okay, this singer and musician from Georgia is credited with helping invent soul and R&B music. He's often referred to as the genius. Who was he?
I'm gonna say Isaac Hayes. No.
No, it's Ray Charles. Ray Charles Robinson
Oh,
Sr. was a
that's
singer,
right. How
songwriter,
about that?
pianist, and alto saxophonist who lost his eyesight during childhood. His style of music combined jazz, R&B, gospel, and country. He won 17 Grammy Awards and was nominated 37 times, and is the only one of a handful of artists to be in both country and rock and roll Hall of Fames. So, you appeared in the Oscar award-winning film Ray as Joe Adams, who
Wouldn't
was
you
a
know it?
brand manager and promoter of Ray for more than 40 years. So, what's something about Ray Charles that surprised you in making this film? So, we know that you do meticulous research as you approach your work.
Well, uh, I forgot about the genius part. I'm so ashamed. Anyway,
It's
you
all
got
love
me
here in the
there.
Blackest Questions.
All
Trust me,
love.
when people
Very
have
good.
turned the tables on me, I'm pretty much 0 for 10.
That's
And
funny.
I'm the
No,
host.
that's very good though. The genius. Well, I think the very interesting thing was I met Ray Charles a couple times before, before the movie. I met him while a Five Heartbeat. We had occasion we ran into Ray Charles, God knows, and I'd been in his company a couple times before. But that said, I met Joe Adams, the character that I played in it, and I met him in person, and we had a long talk, and I think that that was pretty cool because that's a rare thing when you're studying
Hmm.
someone, is that the person is
Hmm.
actually alive still, and so that it's almost it's almost a handicap too because the person's alive and you don't want to sort of portray the whole
Right.
truth if you happen to know it, and because everybody's whole truth is not as attractive as it might be.
Hmm.
Leave us alone. We need to talk. Ray, you can step outside, Joe. I'll be in my office.
But that said, I didn't have any such reservations about playing Joe Adams. He was more or less as he was presented in the film. Like him or hate him. I know some people think he's a very antagonistic guy and he's the villain of some in some sense, but some people are charmed by him, and I found he was very much like that in real life. There are people that was based on interviews with people, and
Hmm.
to a large extent on interviews with himself, with Joe Adams himself. So he was an interesting, fascinating, accomplished man, and it was great to be able not just to to meet him in real life, but also to see some of the performances. He was an actor. He was a first coast to coast black DJ. So these were. He was a Tuskegee Airman. He contributed a great deal to his church. I know he gave them their piano, for example. He was a very interesting man.
Well,
maybe
what
not
I
the nicest guy, but there he
right.
was. Yeah.
What I think so many people appreciate about your work is that you actually can show, and you do show, the levels of people. It's, they're always multidimensional characters. So even their flaws and their complications are extrapolated in these very precise ways, where I feel like we leave your characters sometimes conflicted, right? Especially when you're playing a little more of a sinister character. It's like, well, I mean, I felt it,
Right.
I can see where he's coming from.
Right. Right.
Yes, I really just,
Thank you.
I'm so appreciative of the attention to detail. Okay, so before we get to the Black Lightning round, we're going to take a brief break. I'm with Harry Lennix playing the Blackest Questions. Okay, we're back. Before I let you go, Mr. Lennix, do you have time for the Black Lightning round?
Yes, I do. I got to redeem myself.
Now, there are no right answers. You just tell me the first thing that pops in your mind, okay?
Yes.
Favorite August Wilson play?
Ma Rainey.
Ooh, Scandal. If you had to choose, stage, film, or a television role?
Film.
Okay. Favorite Matrix from the series?
The first Matrix.
Favorite member of the Five Heartbeats? Duck, JT, Eddie, choir boy, or dresser?
Eddie King Jr.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which movie is better, original Top Gun or Top Gun Maverick?
Original Top Gun.
Okay. And last but not least, you've lived in the 3 biggest cities in the country, Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles. Which is your favorite and why?
Sweet Home Chicago, because it is home, because it is it's the root for me. It's the baseline, the foundation. So I have to pick that one.
And are you a deep dish person?
No, I'm not. No.
That's the scandal of the whole episode.
I hope so.
You love
Good.
Chicago, but no
hope,
deep dish.
That's right. I'm hoping to stir up some controversy. I didn't say I won't eat it, but I prefer the thin crust.
Okay. So before we let you go, tell us a little bit more about some projects you have in the works so our listeners can keep up with you and we can continue to support the great Harry Lennix.
Well, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you, Christina, and your watchers, viewers. My project right now, the thing is, which I hope will be my magnum opus, is that I'm trying to build, or in the process of building, Performing Arts Center and Museum in Chicago. We call the museum the African American Museum for the Performing Arts, and we call the Performing Arts Center the Lily and Marcy Center for the Performing Arts. And so we are, we wish really to be the capital of Black performance arts culture, where we want to bring a state-of-the-art theater and to archive everything that goes in there. We want to celebrate what has already been accomplished with Black people in the performing arts, who created really the only indigenous performing arts here in the United States, in our music and our dance and so forth. And we want to be able to have the citadel, really, the capital of that, as I said, right where much of that was born, in Chicago on the South Side in Bronzeville. So that's what I'm working on. We are underway. We have the properties are under control of those 2 sites, but also eventually going to build a museum that is a living museum, that is effectively a college or a university where people can major in these performing arts forms. Now, that's not on the table yet, but that's where I hope it's going, and I hope it lasts for many decades and generations to come. But we have to build it first. But that's right. That's what we're doing.
You will build it, and we will come. And you mentioned a name. You said Lillian Mercer.
Lillian Marcy Center, and so my mother's name was Lillian Lennix, and then Marcella Gilley, or Marcy Gilley, was the principal Bass Elementary School, where I was a substitute teacher for several years, and a woman who was my great mentor. So it's for mothers and mentors in the city of Chicago, the people who allow culture to thrive, and we ought to preserve it. We ought to capture it, create it, and preserve it, and that's what we're about to do.
Well, I can't wait to have you back on the Blackest Questions so we can hear more about this. We can talk to you about more of your projects. But all of our listeners, just be on the lookout for not just Harry Lennix on your televisions, but obviously in different ways that we can support this new cultural institution that will be a part of our communities, large and small, for years to come. I just want to thank you again, Mr. Lennix, for playing the Blackest Questions with us. You did very well.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you all for listening to The Blackest Questions. This show is produced by Sasha Armstrong, Akila Shedrick, Jeffrey Trudeau, and Regina Griffin is the director of the podcast network. If you like what you heard, subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode, and please download the theGrio app to listen and watch many more great shows. Thanks for listening.
Coming this February, the theGrio Black Podcast Network presents Dear Culture, Truish Black Stories.
When you think of sheer artistry, sheer creativity, the ability for someone to bring Black people together in the most fundamental ways, it's, I would say, of my four, Randy Watson's my number one.
When the news about Ricky first broke, what I heard about it is the thing you hear about, every time somebody Black dies, that it was gang related. That means the police don't know what happened, so they just said, probably the gangs, probably, the other Black dudes.
When I think of Akila, I just think about how impressionable white people can be. I think about how, if you watch that movie again, she should have lost like 3 times.
Where were you when you heard the story about them suckers getting served by Wade's dance crew?
It's crazy that you mentioned this. So as a New Yorker, right, everyone knows where they were on 9/11, right? A couple years later, right, 2003, everyone hears about this crazy moment in a boxing ring, because that's where dancers duke it out, right, in boxing rings.
If you could say something to Ricky right now, what would you say to him?
Ricky, you shouldn't have never got that girl pregnant. You knew I had a crush on you. You should have got with me instead.
Moments in Black culture examined like never before. Join us each week as we dive into the Black moments that changed us, that changed the world. Make sure to subscribe to Dear Culture so you never miss an episode.